What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is billionaire Ted Strokes at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth, as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. Now in this video I will go over the letter of response from Donald Trump to U.S. Corporation for Roger Allen Moore. People are saying the letter is a fake, but let us go over it just to see what they're saying. Is this the guy that owns America? Who is this guy, Roger Allen Moore? Okay, dated on May 4th, 2020. U.S. federal person Roger Allen Moore, Raj MXM Moore, Rafa L. Taxpayer identification number / decedent social security 126562303. Note, see United States Department of Treasury / Internal Revenue Service, Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative, and 56, Notice of Fiduciary Agent, sent December 1st, 2019 via United States Postal Service Certified Mail number 701609100002 3023,644. To whomever United States business entity this may concern, who commercially operates on United States public markets and accepts and/or exchanges in United States currency while providing goods and/or services to U.S. customers, consumers in everyday commerce. The above-mentioned U.S. federal public person has a prepaid, non-obligatory commercial debt obligation arrangement with the United States in relation to 12 U.S. Code Section 95A, Regulation of Transactions in Foreign Exchange of Gold and Silver, Property Transfers, vested the U.S. Department of the Treasury, and your Federal Reserve business bank account. Your business is hereby ordered to itemize whatever and however many commercial products and/or services in which the above U.S. federal public person wishes to commercially acquire, adjust the bottom line total cost amount to $0 and release the items. Provide a receipt to the above U.S. federal person by way of its duly authorized representative, Raj Rafa El Sui Juris de Jure, in proper person, and retain the record of the transaction to settle with your federal tax obligations with Internal Revenue Service. As the entire overall transaction is only a commercial accounting matter of what the bankrupt United States owes its true creditors, which is the American people, in direct relation to the Borrowed Gold and National Banking Emergency Act of 1933. All commercial markets belong to the United States, as the United States is the true obligor in each and every U.S. commercial transaction. Any willful dishonoring and / or non-settlement of United States commercial public debt, obligational matters, by any duly bound commercial business entity within the United States will result in federal prosecution to the fullest extent possible. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump, President, Chief Executive Officer of the United States. Sounds like to me, Donald Trump is telling this U.S. corporation to give this guy, Raj Rafa El, his stuff back. Is Donald Trump working for Rafa also? Could this be why the killer clowns, also known as the FBI, raided Donald Trump's mansion in Florida? On August 8, 2022, at 8:39 a.m., FBI agents searched Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago for the material specified in a warrant, including classified material. Could this classified material be these documents about this guy, Raj Rafa El, or the letter from Pope Francis to Obama on July 4, 2014 to cease and desist? A cease and desist is a written notice that demands someone stop an illegal or allegedly illegal activity. Sounds like Donald Trump is telling U.S. corporation to pay up to this guy, Raj Rafa El. Now let's go over some terms that were used in the letter. What is a U.S. federal person? A U.S. person is defined in law as a United States citizen, a permanent resident, or an entity organized under U.S. law. Citizens includes minor children. Permanent residents, as defined by 8 U.S.C. 1101, A20. Entities includes corporations, partnerships, and limited liability companies. The term person is defined in 18 U.S.C. Section 2510, 6, to mean any individual person as well as natural and legal entities. It specifically includes United States and state agents. According to the legislative history, only the governmental units themselves are excluded. S. Rep. No. 10 97 90th Cong 2 days Ses 90 1968. What is 12 U.S. Code Section 95A? 12 U.S.C. 95, a regulation of transactions in foreign exchange of gold and silver, property transfers, vested interests, enforcement, and penalties. Donald Trump is saying the U.S. corporation need to run this guy's gold and silver out of their Federal Reserve Business Bank account. What is a Federal Reserve Business Bank account? A Federal Reserve Business Bank account is a master account that a reserve bank uses to receive deposits from financial institutions, like banks and credit unions. The account centralizes the relationship between the institution and the reserve bank and allows the institution to use optional sub-accounts to segregate account information. Reserve banks offer financial services to financial institutions, including collecting checks, electronically transferring funds, and distributing and receiving cash and coin. Depository institutions are required to keep a certain amount of cash on hand or in a reserve bank account based on the total balances in their checking accounts. This is known as meeting reserve requirements. To open a Federal Reserve Bank account, an institution must complete the Certificate of Resolution and Official Authorization list form at least 8 weeks before opening for business. The Federal Reserve System's main duties include fostering economic conditions that achieve stable prices and maximum sustainable employment, ensuring the safety of the U.S. banking and financial system, protecting consumers' credit rights. Sound like to me Trump is telling U.S. corporation to pay what they owe to this guy, Raaj Moore. Rafa, man, who the hell is this guy? What is the United States Department of Treasury? The Department of the Treasury operates and maintains systems that are critical to the nation's financial infrastructure, such as the production of coin and currency, the disbursement of payments to the American public, revenue collection, and the borrowing of funds necessary to run the federal government. The Department of the Treasury, USDT, is the National Treasury and Finance Department of the federal government of the United States, where it serves as an executive department. The major source of revenue is from individual income taxes. Other revenue is received through social insurance taxes and contributions, excise taxes, trust funds, estate and gift taxes, and customs duties. The United States Department of the Treasury is the country's primary financial institution, responsible for managing the nation's money and promoting economic prosperity. The Treasury Department collects taxes, pays bills, and manages the government's accounts and debt. It also issues securities and produces coins and currency. The Treasury Department enforces tax and finance laws and investigates and prosecutes tax evaders. The Treasury Department advises the President on economic issues and helps ensure a stable financial system. International economic policy. The Treasury Department determines international economic policy and works with foreign governments to encourage global economic growth. National security. The Treasury Department improves financial system safeguards, implements economic sanctions, and identifies financial support networks of national security threats. The Treasury Department was established in 1789 by an act of Congress. The first Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton, appointed by President George Washington. The Treasury Building is located in Washington, D.C. Who is the current Secretary of the Treasury, and what does she do? Janet Yellen is the Secretary of the Treasury. Treasury's operating cash is maintained in an account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and in tax and loan accounts at commercial banks. Sound like to me the United States Department of Treasury is just another nice way of saying IRS, which is the Spanish Inquisition Revenue Services. Americans have intimate, first-hand knowledge of the heartless mechanics of the laws of commerce, religiously applied by the example of the unregistered foreign agents of the Internal Revenue Services. The IRS, accounting firm and collection agency for the private Federal Reserve Bank, was constituted under the UCC at its inception in 1954 and has been operating strictly in that realm ever since. Furthermore, it is contract which establishes and governs any means to create internal and external management, policies and procedures such as venues, forums, and/or jurisdictions, rules and/or regulations thereby, which to inform parties to whom such concerns or however their law is known as it may apply or not and to whomever, to help determine their use and their procedure applying to their assets and their property belonging to their private and any corporate side of their public side of government, created to give order within their social compact. relative to any foreign exchange from the public side of government to the private side of government. Just think for a minute. Does a private owner of a business or property have any political right to make his own rules, regulations, and law for use of his own property? Yes, he does. That is exactly what their statutes, regulations, and rules are. They are internal management, policies, and procedures. They deal with their property and assets of their private side of their government in relationship to any agency public side of their government. In 1871, did all walks of life not signatory to any other such social compact fall under their incorporated jurisdiction of their private government? Yes and no. Only those who lived in their city of Washington, their District of Columbia, and/or their United States and its territories, and any and all registered voters, a Four-Amendment slave citizen, pursuant to their 15 inches Article of Amendment. Now on to the second part of this answer, no. Due to the fact that all walks of life have a choice to emerge into any other political status freely determined by that people to proclaim their separate and equal station and assume among the powers of earth their separate and equal station to which nature's law and nature's creator entitle them within the framework of the international public order. The Internal Revenue Service is a creature of the federal government. The Federal Reserve is a creature of the federal government. Today, the majority of Americans pay taxes because when they get a job, their employer requests that they fill out either Internal Revenue Service Form W-2, Form W-4, or Form 1099, which, as a direct result, withholds taxes from their paychecks for their labor. The majority doesn't have a clue as to why they are paying these taxes in the first place, other than being conditioned to pay their so-called fair share. It has been affirmed that labor is a fundamental, unalienable, protected right, and this fundamental right is not supposed to be taxed. No profit of gain is to be realized via your labor. It is presumed that everyone is expected to know the law. It has been long held that ignorance of the law is not an excuse or a defense. There is a well-established maxim that states, "He who fails to assert his rights has none," which unequivocally establishes that just as a closed mouth never gets fed, a matter must be expressed to be resolved. What is Internal Revenue Service Form 2848? IRS Form 2848 allows tax professionals such as an attorney, CPA, or enrolled agent to represent you before the IRS as if they were the taxpayer. Signing Form 2848 and authorizing someone to represent you does not relieve you of any tax liability. What is power of attorney? A power of attorney, POA, or letter of attorney is a written authorization to represent or act on another's behalf in private affairs, which may be financial or regarding health and welfare, business, or some other legal matter. The person authorizing the other to act is the principal, grantor, or donor of the power. The one authorized to act is the agent, one attorney, or in some common law jurisdictions, the attorney in fact. Formerly, the term power referred to an instrument signed under seal, while a letter was an instrument under hand, meaning that it was simply signed by the parties. But today, a power of attorney does not need to be signed under seal. Some jurisdictions require that powers of attorney be notarized or witnessed, but others will enforce a power of attorney as long as it is signed by the grantor. What is Declaration of Representative? Form 2848. Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative is an Internal Revenue Service, IRS document that authorizes an individual or organization to represent a taxpayer by appearing before the IRS at an audit. What is Notice of Fiduciary Agent? Upon notice to the Secretary that any person is acting for another person in a fiduciary capacity, such fiduciary shall assume the powers, rights, duties, and privileges of such other person in respect of a tax imposed by this title, except as otherwise specifically provided and except that the tax shall be collected. A fiduciary is someone who manages money or property for someone else. When you're named a fiduciary and accept the role, you must, by law, manage the person's money and property for their benefit, not yours. A fiduciary holds a position of trust over another person. With a power of attorney, for example, a fiduciary may have to make financial or healthcare decisions for a principal. The law requires them to act in good faith in the interest of the principal above all other concerns. Fiduciaries are thus legally and ethically bound to act in the other's best interests. A fiduciary may be responsible for the general well-being of another, for example, a child's legal guardian, but the task usually involves finances, for example, managing the assets of another person or a group of people. How does a fiduciary get paid? Fiduciaries, RIAs in particular, often get paid in the form of fees. RIAs or similar fiduciaries in the financial space cannot receive commissions. They are legally bound not to recommend financial products from companies that will pay them a commission. What is a business entity? A legal entity is a business organization that is legally recognized as a separate entity from its owners or operators. Legal entities have legal rights and responsibilities and are subject to local, state, and federal laws. They are able to enter into contracts, sue or be sued, own property, file taxes, and be held accountable for their actions. Legal entities are important because they protect the personal assets of their owners and ensure that their business operations are legal. They can be for-profit or non-profit and can take many forms, including corporations, limited liability companies, LLCs, partnerships, and sole proprietorships. Each type of legal entity offers different protections and tax burdens. For example, in a partnership, all partners share profits and liabilities. In a limited partnership, general partners manage the business, while limited partners only invest money and have more protection from business debts. Legal entities are assigned a legal entity identifier, LEI, a 20-character code that connects a company with financial information. A legal entity is any company or organization that has legal rights and responsibilities, including tax filings. It is a business that can enter into contracts either as a vendor or a supplier and can sue or be sued in a court of law. What is T-bonds? Treasury bonds, T-bonds, are long-term loans to the U.S. government that investors can purchase to earn a fixed rate of interest. T-bonds are debt securities issued by the U.S. Treasury Department with a maturity of 20 or 30 years. Investors receive interest payments every 6 months, called coupons, until the bond matures. At maturity, the government pays back the original amount of the loan, plus any interest. You can buy T-bonds directly from the U.S. Treasury at treasurydirect.com or through a bank, broker, or mutual fund company. T-bonds are generally considered low risk because the U.S. government has never defaulted on its debt. However, they are still subject to interest rate risk, which means that if interest rates rise, the price of the bond will fall. What is obligatory commercial debt? Obligatory commercial debt is money a business owes for goods or services it received but did not pay for on time. The business that provided the goods or services is the creditor, and the business that owes the money is the debtor. Commercial debt can arise from a variety of situations, including payment terms. Businesses often establish payment terms through contracts, bills, or invoices. For example, a net 30 inches invoice means the buyer has 30 days to pay. Co-signing. If a business owner co-signs on a loan, they may be personally liable for the debt. Guaranteeing an obligation. If a business owner guarantees a corporate obligation, the creditor may be able to go after their personal assets. Commercial debt collection can be challenging and can damage business relationships if the creditor makes mistakes. Commercial debt collection laws vary by state, and some states require collection firms to be licensed and bonded. Commercial debts are of different types, including unpaid invoices, loans, contractual obligations, and trade credit. The recovery process of commercial debts is divided into 2 key phases: assessing the debt and communicating with the debtor. Commercial debt refers specifically to any money owed by a business entity for services rendered or goods purchased for use in its operations. Commercial debt comes in all sizes and shapes. Most commercial debt is on a net 30 billing basis. This means the business has 30 days from the invoice to pay the full amount. What are examples of debt obligations? Non-mortgage debts include installment loans, student loans, revolving accounts, lease payments, alimony, child support, and separate maintenance. See below for treatment of payments due under a federal income tax installment agreement. What is proper person? In legal terms, a proper person refers to someone who is considered suitable or qualified to participate in a legal proceeding, often implying they have the necessary character, competence, and legal standing to do so. This phrase is frequently used in the context of fit and proper person, where a person must demonstrate their moral integrity and ability to fulfill a specific legal role, like being admitted to the legal profession. Key points about proper person in law. It signifies someone who meets the legal criteria to engage in a particular activity, such as acting as a representative in a case or holding a specific professional license. Assessment factors. When evaluating if someone is a proper person, courts may consider their criminal history, financial stability, professional conduct, and overall reputation. Fit and proper test. This phrase is often used interchangeably with proper person and is a standard applied by courts or regulatory bodies to assess an individual's suitability for a particular role. To become a lawyer, an applicant must demonstrate that they are a fit and proper person by passing the bar exam and proving good character. The court may determine if a company is a proper party to join a lawsuit based on their direct interest in the case. Proper person means the registered owner or last prior transferee, whether or not described as fiduciary for another, or his or her authorized agent, legal representative or successor to his or her interest by operation of law. Donald Trump told U.S. corporation they have to itemize their business. What is itemize your business? Itemizing deductions allow taxpayers to subtract certain expenses from their adjusted gross income, AGI, reducing their taxable income. Unlike the standard deduction, which is a flat amount based on filing status, itemizing lets you deduct specific expenses if they exceed the standard deduction amount. How do itemized deductions work? The process of taking itemized deductions, often called itemizing, allows taxpayers to deduct certain expenses from their taxable income, often up to a certain limit. In lieu of itemizing, taxpayers can reduce their taxable income by a flat amount via the standard deduction. To claim your itemized deductions, you'll use Schedule A, Form 1040, to list and calculate your eligible expenses. You'll then subtract the total from your gross income. What remains is deemed your taxable income. You can find detailed instructions for the eligible expenses on the IRS website. To itemize is to make a list. If you work at a store that sells pet fish, you might need to itemize your stock of fish, separately listing the number of goldfish, cuttlefish, and jellyfish. When you place items, or individual things, on a list, you itemize them. What types of things can you itemize? If you itemize, you can deduct these expenses: bad debts, canceled debt on home, capital losses, donations to charity, gains from sale of your home, gambling losses, home mortgage interest, income, sales, real estate, and personal property taxes. Donald Trump said U.S. corporation is the true debtor and obligator. The American people are the true creditors since they robbed the American people for their gold in 1933. What is creditors versus debtor? A creditor is the person or entity that is owed money, while a debtor is the person or entity who owes the money. Essentially, the creditor is the lender, and the debtor is the borrower in a financial transaction. Some key points are the creditor, the party who extends credit, like a bank providing a loan, meaning they are owed money by the debtor. Debtor, the party who owes money to the creditor, like someone taking out a loan from a bank. Example: if you take out a loan from a bank to buy a car, you are the debtor, and the bank is the creditor. The debtor is the party that owes the money, debt, while the creditor is the party that loaned the money. For example, if Jay loans Riva $100, Riva is the debtor and Jay is the creditor. One way to remember this is that the debtor is the party that owes the debt. Creditors are individuals or entities that have lent money to another individual or entity. They typically charge interest, and the money is owed back to them. For example, a bank lending money to a person to purchase a house is a creditor. What is the true obligor? An obligor is the individual or entity that is legally bound to fulfill a contractual obligation, essentially the person who owes something to another party, the obligé, under a contract, such as a debt or payment. In simpler terms, the true obligor is the primary party responsible for making a payment or fulfilling a commitment, even if there are other parties involved like guarantors. Key points about an obligor, meaning the person who has the legal obligation to perform an action or make a payment. In a loan scenario, the borrower is typically considered the obligor, distinguishing from a guarantor. While a guarantor may be involved, the true obligor is the primary party responsible for fulfilling the obligation. What is an obligor obligé? Obligor, the person who owes court-ordered child support. Obligé, the parent or guardian to whom child support is owed. Donald Trump is saying the U.S. corporation has the public debt. What is the public debt? Public debt, also known as government debt, is the total amount of outstanding debt owed by a country's government. It includes debt from all levels of government, including local, state, and national. Public debt can be used to finance public spending and budget deficits. Here are some key facts about public debt. How it's acquired. Public debt can be acquired internally or externally. Internal debt is owed to domestic lenders, while external debt is owed to lenders outside the country. How it's measured. Public debt is often expressed as a ratio of a country's gross domestic product, GDP. This ratio is used to indicate how well a government can meet its future obligations. What it's made up of? Public debt is made up of various types of securities, including bonds, bills, notes, tips, and savings bonds. How it's used? Public debt is a key source of resources for governments to finance public spending. How it's reported? The U.S. Treasury Department reports the amount of outstanding debt at the end of each business day. The U.S. Treasury uses the terms national debt, federal debt, and public debt interchangeably. A country's gross government debt, also called public debt or sovereign debt, is the financial liabilities of the government sector. 81 changes in government debt over time reflect primarily borrowing due to past government deficits. A deficit occurs when a government's expenditures exceed revenues. Government debt may be owed to domestic residents as well as to foreign residents. If owed to foreign residents, that quantity is included in the country's external debt. In 2020, the value of government debt worldwide was $87.40 US trillion, or 99% measured as a share of gross domestic product, GDP. Government debt accounted for almost 40% of all debt, which includes corporate and household debt, the highest share since the 1960s. The rise in government debt since 2007 is largely attributable to stimulus measures during the Great Recession and the C-19 recession. The ability of government to issue debt has been central to state formation and to state building. Public debt has been linked to the rise of democracy, private financial markets, and modern economic growth. Government debt is typically measured as the gross debt of the general government sector that is in the form of liabilities that are debt instruments. A debt instrument is a financial claim that requires payment of interest and/or principal by the debtor to the creditor in the future. Examples include debt securities, such as bonds and bills, loans, and government employee pension obligations. What is federal prosecution? Federal prosecution is the legal process of prosecuting a crime that violates federal law. The U.S. Attorney's Office represents the United States in federal cases, which are heard in federal courthouses. The FBI and other government agencies are also involved in federal prosecutions. Here are some things to know about federal prosecution. Who prosecutes? The U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes federal cases, while state and local prosecutors handle state cases. What cases are federal? Federal cases involve violations of federal law or matters of federal jurisdiction. For example, the FBI prosecutes crimes against the government, such as stealing from the government or hacking into an official account. Penalties. Federal crimes can carry more severe penalties than state crimes. Federal cases often result in higher sentences because of mandatory minimum and maximum sentencing laws. Collaboration. Federal and state prosecutors sometimes work together to decide who will take a case. Non-criminal alternatives. Government attorneys consider non-criminal alternatives to prosecution, such as sanctions or other measures. Federal crimes are offenses that specifically violate U.S. federal laws. Federal offenses are prosecuted by government agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and can oftentimes carry penalties that are far more severe than those levied by state courts. Under the federal criminal justice system, the prosecutor has wide latitude in determining when, whom, how, and even whether to prosecute for apparent violations of federal criminal law. Keep in mind, Raaj Rafa L. is a Moor, a dark-skinned Moor who owns Amexem/America Estate. He has some type of deal with U.S. Corporation? Sound like Donald Trump is telling U.S. Corporation they're in default on their contract with this guy. What you are about to see take place in 2025 is about to be crazy. Now, we went and looked this dude up, and the only thing we could find out on him is Raj Moore Rafa LV State of Maryland Inc. on October 27, 2011, in U.S. Court of Appeals, 4th Circuit on a civil rights case. Now, why would the guy that owned Amexem/America be suing the state of Maryland for civil rights? Shouldn't it be human rights instead of civil rights? Maybe this guy had another angle on this one. Another document we found was Raj Amexem Moore Rafa LV State of Georgia Inc., where the case was reported. Recommendations and dismissing of the case was signed by Judge William T. Moore, Jr. on May 25, 12. Could this Judge William T. Moore, Jr. be some kinfolk to Roger Allen Moore, a /K/a Raaj Amexem Moore, Rafa L.? Also, we found Roger Moore, the actor who played in 7 series of the movie 007. 007 is a hidden code for the circle 7. The numeral 7 and the circle is symbols of fullness and completion. The number 007 is the code name of the fictional British Secret Service agent James Bond in Ian Fleming's novels, and the films based on them. The number has specific meaning, 00. The 00 prefix indicates that Bond is a member of the elite group of agents with a license to kill. Keep in mind, 0 or O represent a cipher. It means there is a hidden secret there. Being that it's 2 zeros, that means it's 2 secrets hidden there. In cryptography, a cipher, or cipher, is an algorithm for performing encryption or decryption, a series of well-defined steps that can be followed as a procedure. An alternative, less common term is encipherment. To encipher or encode is to convert information into cipher or code. In common parlance, cipher is synonymous with code, as they are both a set of steps that encrypt a message. However, the concepts are distinct in cryptography, especially classical cryptography. The 7 Bond's serial number, indicating that he is the 7th agent to receive the license to kill. Keep in mind, we are dealing with fictional British agents called the Bar, who have the license to kill. They have bonds which are contracts. They have the license to commit all kinds of illegal acts to the American people. A bond is a debt security that represents a loan from an investor to a government, corporation, or other entity in exchange for interest payments. The borrower uses the money to fund its operations, and the investor receives interest on the investment. The bond has a maturity date when the borrower pays back the principal and final interest payment. Bonds can be short-term, 1-3 years, medium-term, 4-10 years, or long-term, greater than 10 years. Some bonds are callable, meaning the issuer can retire the bond before it matures. You can make money on a bond from interest payments and by selling it for more than you paid. You can lose money if you sell it for less than you paid, or the issuer defaults on their payments. A bond's risk is based on the issuer's creditworthiness and interest rates. Bonds can be a vital component of a financial plan, offering potential stability and a steady income stream. They can help balance out risks associated with stock-based investments. A bond is a sum of money offered up by a party to secure the performance of some legal duty. The most common kind of bond in criminal law is the bail bond. Also, the name James, as in Jamestown. Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement in North America, established in 1607. Keep in mind, these guys that own the U.S. corporation are Moorish Zionist Jews. So, this guy Roger Allen Moore, a /K/a Raaj Amexem Moore, Rafa L, must be a part of the good Moors, at the North Gate. When we knock, you better bump straight. A license to kill in law refers to a legal concept where an individual or agency is authorized to use lethal force in specific situations, essentially giving them permission to kill in the course of their duties, often under strict guidelines and only when absolutely necessary. This is typically applied to situations like law enforcement using deadly force to apprehend a dangerous suspect or military personnel in combat scenarios. Key points about license to kill, not an explicit legal term. While the phrase license to kill is widely used, it's not a specific legal term found in statutes. Rather, it describes the legal justification for using lethal force in certain extreme situations. Strict legal limitations. Even when authorized to use deadly force, there are strict legal requirements that must be met, such as imminent threat to life, proportionality of force used, and attempts to de-escalate situations first. Controversial aspect. The concept of license to kill is often debated due to concerns about potential abuse of power, especially in situations involving police use of force. Example, situations where license to kill might be invoked. Police officer apprehending a suspect who is actively firing a weapon at others. Military personnel engaging enemy combatants in wartime. Law enforcement using deadly force to prevent a hostage-taking situation. A license to kill, or license to kill in American English, is a license granted by a government or government agency to a particular operative or employee to initiate the use of lethal force in the delivery of their objectives. The part where Trump say, who commercially operates on United States public markets and accepts and/or exchanges in United States currency while providing goods and/or services to U.S. customers and consumers in everyday commerce. In this part, he is saying that this U.S. corporation took your real money and gave you their paper money to operate in their commercial system. U.S. corporation is controlling the export and output of goods, but the U.S. corporation is a so-called government agency hired by foreigners. The money they make is not being put back into the American economy, it's going to the pockets of the Lords of London and the Black Hand families. We also found this on this guy, Roger Allen Moore, Raaj Amexem Moore, Rafa El, it reads. On the Certificate of Live Birth Financial Certificated Security Instrument, State File Number 26433, Custodians Number 1614, Date of Filing, May 18, 1965. AD, Julian Gregorian Calendar, which has been registered at Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, one of the principal operating subsidiaries being Depository Trust Company, with DTCC now being disingenuously listed as holder in due course. It clearly deceptively says, "This is to certify that this is a true and correct copy of the certificate filed with the Vital Records Service, Georgia Department of Human Resources. This certified copy is issued under the authority of Chapter 31, 10, Vital Records, Code of Georgia." The person on this particular certificated security financial instrument is in fact an artificial fictitious legal entity, corporate person, which exists only in the imaginary make-believe world known as the public. The legal entities known particularly as State of Georgia, United States, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, Depository Trust Company, Federal Reserve Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and Bank of International Settlements are in fact also artificial fictitious corporate persons, otherwise known as corporations, which also furthermore exist only in the imaginary make-believe world known as the public. It is generally known that the legal entity, public person, displayed on the birth certificate, Roger Allen Moore, Raaj Amexim Moore Rafa L., is registered at the U.S. Department of Commerce, and the birth certificate bond is then held in trust for the Federal Reserve at Depository Trust Company. Funds, known as money of account, is then given to United States Federal Corporation as a credit from the International Monetary Fund, which totals the pre-calculated taxable labor amount for the working life of the surety person on the birth certificate. This process, unknowingly to the parents, converts the newborn into human collateral, human property, livestock, and human resources. Their human energy, biological property, is stolen, which is equivalent to child kidnapping, human trafficking. Indigenous notice of rightful holder in due course in relation to certificated security, financial instrument and notice of property reclamation and collateral capturing of same. Property, certificate of live birth bond issued by State of Georgia, State File Number 26433, Custodians Number 1614, in month and year of May 1965 AD, Julian Gregorian Calendar, taken out on artificial fictitious legal entity, U.S. corporate public person, Roger Allen Moore Raaj Amexem Moore Rafa L., human collateral serving as the source of value for property, natural flesh and blood, Asiatic melanin-rich genetically dominant Hugh child, boy of Moorish/Moorish descent, now a human, adult, naturally identified as Raaj Amexem Moore Rafa L., who is naturally acting to give notice in this particular document. In closing remarks, we don't know who this Roger Allen Moore Raaj Amexem Moore Rafa L. is, but he must be a powerful dude on the land. There are no pictures of this guy anywhere. Is this guy a dirty Moor or good Moor? He has a P.O. box in Washington, D.C., and an estate address in Connecticut and upstate New York. But little else is known about this guy. Is he a good guy or bad guy? I think he might be with the good Moors. Some believe that this guy Roger Allen Moore Raaj Amexem Moore Rafa L. is a strawman, frontman for the Black Hand Moorish Zionist Jews. But for sure, there is some hidden codes here. We will have more for you later. Hit that like button and subscribe button, family. We will be back with more and more later. Peace.